All right, what's going on, my fellow Americans and my fellow Texans and Lubbock citizens? It's me, Rattlesnake Roy, here with another episode. We had a very special guest come on, but before we get into that, I would like to give a shout out to the sponsors of our podcast. Our first sponsor, Izzy Money Vintage. If you're not familiar with him, I can tell you that he is the best in the game. He has the coolest clothes. Personally, I own probably the best t-shirt ever made, and I got it from him. So he does a lot of, he's got a lot of good tech stuff, a lot of good cowboy apparel, a lot of good vintage things. So if you want to look good or you want to buy something for your kids or your partner, this is perfect for you. He's got very reasonable prices. He's located at 2400 Glenna Goodacre Boulevard, Suite R104. He's open Tuesday through Saturday from 12 to 3 and then 4 to 7 p.m., closing at 6 p.m. on Saturdays. And you can contact him at 806-777-9061. You can hear my dog snoring in the background. I'm sorry. But yeah, you can contact him and you can personally set up an appointment if these hours don't match with your schedule. He'll be willing to work with you. You can also visit his Depop and order online. He's very quick. He's a businessman. I like him. Good guy. Friend of the podcast. So shout out to Izzy Money Vintage for coming on the podcast. For sponsoring this podcast. And then also our other sponsor is Hart Enterprises. Hart Enterprises right now is advertising a 1-ton mini split, which is good for cooling and heating up to 600 square feet. And they are starting off at $1,650 installed with less electricity or less electrical. I know that if you're out here and you're hustling and you want to move into a building, a garage, maybe you want to, turn your garage into something and you want to heat it and cool it, this is something you can look into. I think we're going to try to do this in the future with the Snake Pit. So, yeah, shout out to Hart Enterprises and shout out their family. They're local, so you can contact Brian at 806-544-9668 or Chris Hernandez at 806-781-5097. So those are our sponsors for today's episode. And today's guest is Adam Hernandez. Adam Hernandez is actually a mayor candidate coming up in the 2024 election here in Lubbock, Texas. But he really came on to talk about Freedom Act Lubbock. Now, what that is, they're trying to get petitions. I don't know if you've been out here in Lubbock and you've seen these guys. They're trying to get you guys to sign a petition that will decriminalize low levels of cannabis use. And as we know, it's illegal here in the state, unfortunately, but through this petition, we can help eliminate people going to jail for low levels of marijuana, which is ridiculous if you ask me. So these things should be decriminalized and legalized here, and this is a way we can do it. Now, if you are a little sus on how to vote or being registered to vote, this episode, we go through it all. We explain the process, and it's super simple, super easy. Even if you don't smoke like myself, this is something, you can get involved with. I know a lot of you smoke, so if you want, this is right up your alley. This is a way to be a good American patriot and exercise your right that many people died for. I know that sounds silly, but they did. And no matter who you are or what you do, if you're registered to vote here in Lubbock, Texas, this is a cause worth you going out and doing something. If you're not registered, they will help you. It's very simple, very easy. I think this, in the podcast, we mentioned that this town population is 260,000 people around there. And to my surprise, 180-something thousand people are registered to vote. Going in, I thought that was the problem. Like, it's not hard to get registered to vote. It's not hard to go to your local, places. Lubbock's not that big to go vote. There's really nothing. There's no things stopping us from voting. I didn't understand it, but we go into it. We go into this podcast, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you're new, please hit that subscribe button. That is a great way to support the podcast. It's free and it's easy. If you're listening with Apple or Spotify, you can follow us. Hit that rate, hit that review, give us the 5 stars, or give us whatever stars you think we deserve. So I hope you listen, and I hope you enjoy it if you're new to the Snake Pit. And I hope you continue to follow us as we try to do more things like this. Sure, we like to have fun, but we also like to do things for the community and tell the stories of people in this community. So thank you guys. If you're wanting to buy some merch, I have some merch. I have some bucket hats. I have some shirts. We're also on patreon.com/snakepitstudios where we do Conversation Pit for $1. $1 a month. Less than a cup of coffee. I couldn't tell you what you can get for $1 here, but you can get some good content, or you can support the podcast. So hope you guys enjoy this episode. I hope you get something out of it, and I hope you get your butts up and you register to vote and you sign this petitions, less than 5 minutes of your time. And in the process, we can help change things here in Lubbock. Our vote matters. It really does. Listen to the podcast. You'll understand it. Your vote matters at a local level. It really does. So I hope you guys get involved and not just talking all that crap you do on social media, but you actually back it up with action. This is the way to do it. Thank you guys. I hope you enjoy. Ooh. You ready, Brado?
Yeah.
Well, we're here with Mr. Adam Hernandez. Got a lot of interesting things to talk about, but let's get it. I believe I checked 186,000 people. Can you look up Lubbock's population? Are registered to vote.
Mm-hmm.
In this last mayor race, which you were in, less than 10% showed up. So that's the problem, right? You were saying.
That's the problem, yeah.
What's going on?
So basically what we have going on in the city, and as long as I've been alive, I'm 42 years old, we've had 2 districts here in town, Districts 4 and 5, which are the extreme south of the city, that show up at 95% every time. And there's about 16,000 of them that are going to show up each and every time faithfully. And then in the other 4 districts, the very rare high turnout precincts that we have are at 50%, and that's very rare. Most of the precincts, the voting precincts in the rest of the city show up at about 20% or less. And when you look at the contrast, so I worked at a polling site during early voting during the last November cycle. And when you look at the turnout, we actually had 9,000 people come through the one location where we worked at, which was 82nd and Frankfurt United, and that's in District 5. And we had 9,000 people come through there in that 12 days. And you contrast that with Parkway in East Lubbock, where I'm from, and about 900 people showed up in that same 12 days. You look at Amigos United over in the north side, and these are where the people need to desperately show up for themselves. About 500 showed up for the whole 12 days. And so it's a huge, huge gap.
Why? What do you think it is?
Well, when you talk to people and you ask them about voting or why they don't vote, you hear pretty similar things from a lot of people. So one of the things I would say the most common is, they're all the same. Right? So
who they're voting for is all the same?
Who they're voting for is all the same. All the options are all the same. And a lot of them were just so, just checked out of the whole political process that they didn't even know I was running. They didn't know there was somebody that maybe they could connect with running. They just didn't even know because they were just so checked out and they just felt like, they're all the same, not even going to pay attention. So you hear that. You hear a lot of my vote won't count. Obviously, we haven't tried that. And then you'll hear some people even say, we tried that before. No, we haven't. We have the data for at least the last 40 years, and we have not tried that.
Has it been the same pretty much?
It's been the same exact, like clockwork. And so we have not tried that. And then outside of that, you'll hear a bunch of conspiracy theory stuff. And
that's where I go down?
Right,
No,
right. So, it's kind of a mix, but for the most part, people just feel like, especially here in Lubbock, there's been a long history of neglect in certain areas of the city, and so they don't really feel represented by their council people, and so they just don't feel like it's worth their time.
And you're a council? Are you a councilman?
No, no. But I'm running for mayor. I ran for mayor in the last municipal election cycle in 2022, and I'll be running again in May of 2024.
Well, it's every 2 years?
Yes. For the mayor, it's every 2 years. For council, it's every 4 years.
And can you explain to us what the city council, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is their job exactly?
Right. So the city council essentially has 3 employees. They have one of their employees is the city manager, then it's the city secretary, and it's the city attorney. All the other city departments work for the city manager. That's including LPD, fire department, the whole 9. They work for the city manager. So essentially what the council's job is supposed to be is to kind of pass policy that the people want to direct the city manager and those departments to do what the people want. A lot of times that just doesn't happen. I think a lot of times our council even including the current one, forget that the city manager actually works for them and not the other way around. And so sometimes if city staff feels like something should just happen a certain way or continue to happen a certain way, they'll convince the council not to do something. But it's really the council's job to lead the city in a policy, from a policy perspective.
And these sort of things, the people can get involved, right? How do they do that?
So there's a lot of the way policy is made here and pretty much anywhere is a lot of it starts in city boards. So it just depends. There's city boards for all sorts of things, parks, whatever, right? Like all sorts of different boards. And a lot of times you can interact there. And what will happen is those boards, depending on whatever they're dealing with, they'll give recommendations up to the city council, and then the city council will vote those. Or you have it where the city council itself will just take up an issue for whatever reason. And so the ways that people can get involved in that way are to go to those city boards. You can see all this stuff online too. So if you don't have time to go and you just want to learn how the city operates, you can go check out those videos and see what happens. But then another way to get involved is to go and give public comment at city council meetings. And so if there's an issue that you care about, then you can go up there and make a comment and tell the council what you think. And ideally, they consider that and then make their decision. But a lot of times, a lot of the communities don't feel heard. And that, again, plays into that voter apathy.
So if I had like a pothole I wanted fixed, I could do that? Something like that?
Yeah, so people can really get involved in an easy way in that way. So let's say potholes or a light out on your street or whatever. You need a stop sign on the corner, whatever it is. There's the My Lubbock app. It's My LBK. You can go to the app store and find it. And you can actually take a picture of that. It'll drop a pin on your location. And when you submit it, it'll send it to the right department for them to come fix it. And a lot of people don't know about that. But, you know, you can use it for illegal dumping. You can use it for tall weeds, whatever, right? Whatever you want to kind of report. But that's where people can help out the city council because the city council really can't see everything, right? It's kind of a big city. And so if you see something, you can report it to that app.
Well, I'll be darned. Is it kind of let that pass real quick? The storm going on right now. Does it kind of disappoint you that all this is kind of accessible, kind of easy?
It does. And I get it from the other perspective because I was actually 39 years old before I even ever registered to vote. Before we created Lubbock Compact, the organization that I'm a part of, that I'm a co-founder of, that's behind the Freedom Act.
Which we'll get into.
Right, which we'll get into. Before we did that, I was one of those people. So checked out. I didn't even know who our mayor was until the day before I met him because I had to Google who he was, right? And so I get it. But then when I got involved and we started actually being able to affect outcomes and create change in city policy that were positive for different communities, I started to realize the power that I had been leaving on the table all those years. And so, it is frustrating for me because I understand why there's that gap, but I'm trying to fill it because I understand how much power we actually have that we just leave on the table. And then, we complain about it and we don't like it, but we really don't even show up to fight for ourselves.
This is why I was paying attention to the mayor race, because just from my perspective, there's a lot of vocal people on social media. I was like, all right, well, let's see what happens. Nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing happened.
And I have no bad things to say about Trey Payne, but a lot of people do. Well, you had your fucking chance. Sorry, you had your chance.
Yeah. And so we're going to try again. And that really is the challenge to overcome. So what we're going to try to do is, first of all, we have things like the Freedom Act to give somebody, first of all, it's good policy, but it also gives people a reason to show up because people will show up for issues.
Yeah, and this is another one I'm paying attention to.
Right. And then, the other part of that, which I didn't have enough time to do last time, that we're going to heavily focus on now is literally me going door to door, event to event, to let as many people as possible just meet me, ask me questions, and to understand that there is a candidate that's different from what's been happening here in Lubbock. And it's just going to be a lot of that, a lot of hard work, but we're ready to do that because it's important that we use that power.
Let's stop on that note because Jennifer's here. All right. So we have power to the people, pretty much. Is that what kind of direct democracy means? Essentially?
That's what direct action means, yeah.
Yeah, because I could see on at the White House. I'm just gonna say your vote not mattering, but definitely matters on this level. This is where it really does matter, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because you can go and meet your council people. You can go talk to them. You can actually see what kind of person they are up close, right? How do they interact with people? What's their character? How do they respond to different things? How do they respond to criticism? How do they respond to feedback from the community? You know, do they dismiss you like they have been, or do they listen to you and really try to take in your input? And so outside of that, you know, you can really affect change. We've been able, and it's a long list I won't bore everybody with, but we've been able to get a whole long list of things done through direct action because on a local level you can do that.
Now, are these council people and mayors historically white males?
Yeah, so
Here in Lubbock.
Yeah, so prior to 1974, they were all white males. And the reason for that being is that we did not have city council districts. All of our city council people were at large. And that meant that everybody in the entire city could vote for those council people, no matter where they lived. Which meant that even in East and North Lubbock, where like East Lubbock's predominantly black population, it's more of a half and half mix now, but and then North Lubbock is predominantly Hispanic, and you even had white men that were the council people for those districts. And so what happened was activists in the city, and one of them I'm blessed to know that was the plaintiff on the case, Miss Rose Wilson. She's 95 years old right now.
Shout out to her.
Yeah, and she was the plaintiff on the case that they brought against the city of Lubbock to get us single member districts. And they did that and won that case. And once they won that case, the very next election cycle, we elected our first Hispanic council person, Maggie Trejo, and then our first black council person, TJ Patterson.
Just like that. Mm-hmm. Damn.
Yep.
Shout out to those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always think about like what it would be like to be in those situations. Like how much hate you probably received.
Yeah.
Like real hate.
Yeah.
From these guys.
Right. And you know, we're just blessed to have Miss Rose. You know, I come from Parkway or the area near Parkway, and you know, Miss Rose is a tough lady.
Excuse my ignorance. Where's Parkway?
Parkway is in East Lubbock. It's in the
Lubbock.
northeast quadrant of the city. It's east of I-27. And so it's kind of like a lot of people who have lived there their whole lives don't even know that area of town exists past
I've heard of it.
I-27.
Parkway's like where that bingo is out there, like on MLK.
Oh, by Hell's Gates and all that, kind of.
No, not really. It's like, I mean, I guess it's like down
if you
the street.
go south, yeah, but that's the north side.
Right.
They're gentrifying that area, aren't they?
There's efforts. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well.
But yeah, she's a tough lady. You know, if it would have been anybody, it would have been her. And so yeah, I mean, definitely shout out to her and them for having the courage to do that, and especially back then in the 70s. You know, as a black woman.
Yeah, that'd have been wild. Mm-hmm. Can we talk a little bit about your childhood?
Sure.
What was it like?
So yeah, and I don't mind at all. I talk about this with everybody. So I didn't have the greatest childhood. I grew up right here in Lubbock, but so from the ages of 4 to 8, my mom had left us with her mom. My mom's white. My dad's mix of Hispanic, and we have a lot of Native American ancestry. And so my mom's mom was very racist. My mom just kind of wanted to party. She was young, had kids young, and wanted to do her thing, didn't want to mess with her kids. So she left us with her mom from when we were 4 to 8. We were subjected to pretty intense child abuse, me and my brother, on a physical level, emotional level, and all of that. And it led to my mom almost getting us taken away when I was 8. And so she kind of got her stuff together so that she wouldn't lose us. But then by the time we were 10, her and my dad had got a divorce. And my dad was a truck driver, so he wasn't really ever around anyway. And so when they got a divorce, my dad got custody. He went and left us at his mom's house, and I don't know where he went for a while. And so my grandma was kind of tired of taking care of everybody's kids. She had already raised all her other kids and all of this stuff. And so the streets really raised me and my brother. We kind of separated at an early age as well, and so I kind of went off and did my own thing. I ran away the first time when I was like 13 with the intent to stay gone, but they got me back in about 9 months because they started threatening my dad that he was going to get tickets if I didn't go to school. It wasn't necessarily that he was looking for me. It's just that he didn't want to get a ticket. And so came back and then left home officially when I was 16. And by that time, I had bought all my own car. I had bought my own car because obviously being in the streets, I was involved in all sorts of things. So I had my own money. During those early times when I would leave home and things like that, I was homeless a lot of the times, sleeping in abandoned buildings, wherever, sleeping with people who would let me stay there. And then, so what really turned it around was the birth of my daughter. And so I became a young father at 19. And, the best way I can explain it to people is because I didn't want my kids to go through anything like me and my brother went through. And so when we found out she was pregnant out of nowhere, it was like I was like going 200 miles an hour and just coming up on a brick wall, right? And I didn't have the life skills. I didn't have any sort of capability to do this, right? And so I said, well, first things first, I need to, just essentially upgrade my skills, try to figure out what I'm going to do professionally. I've been an artist my whole life, so I knew I wanted to do that. It was actually a couple of teachers at Estacado High School that really kind of helped me graduate because I wouldn't have graduated. And if that wouldn't have happened, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you right now, just to be honest. And so through that experience, I was able to go to Texas State Technical College in Waco for multimedia design, which is the business I wanted to build. So I did that, taking 16 credit hours, working a 40-plus hour job, taking care of a brand new baby and wife, and staying in family housing in Waco. It was supposed to be a 2-year program, and I finished it in 9 months. So I graduated in that first year. We kind of stayed there another couple of years and then came back to Lubbock. And so that was my early years. And then so I just was building my business and raising my daughters. By 2004, I had my second daughter, my youngest daughter. And then the thing that really kind of just threw me for a loop in life, obviously, prior to this time, my ex-wife and I had already split up. And so me and my daughters have always been very close, and so they were always with me. And then in 2018, my oldest daughter took her own life. And so when that happened, it threw me into a deep depression. And I wasn't really much good to anybody for like 2 years because, my daughters were like everything, And so me and my younger daughter really struggled through that. Luckily, I had made up with my dad by that point. So he allowed me to stay with him through that time because, I just couldn't do anything, And so finally, I was kind of trying to come out of that, try to, become part of life again, the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
And so that's what launched me into getting into activism, because what happened was, just like everybody else, we were sitting around, everybody was locked down, and then the George Floyd incident happened. And when that George Floyd incident happened, all over the country, but even here in Lubbock, you started having energy where people wanted to get involved and wanted to change things about their community. And so I got caught up in that, and I started thinking, like, what am I doing? I spent a lot of time talking about things. I knew a lot about history and stuff that had happened, but I wasn't doing anything. I was just kind of minding my business, running my business, raising my daughters. And so that's what really started making me want to get involved. And so I came across what's called the Lubbock Disparity Report in a Facebook group that had been created around that kind of stuff. And it was written by a guy named Nick Bergfeld, Dr. Nick Bergfeld, and he's still a professor here at Tech.
Is this post George Floyd?
This is right, yeah, post George Floyd. And so what the Lubbock Disparity Report was talking about was something that I already knew about. People who grew up in East Lubbock and North Lubbock, we heard these stories from our grandparents and our parents, and we understood that the city was moving in a southwest direction. And every time it would kind of lurch a little further, everything behind it would decay a little more. And they never really gave any resources to our community, so we kind of already knew that. And so when I read the disparity report, what it did was gave me the data and the policy decisions behind how that happened. So my life kind of flashed before my eyes. All these things I had seen, I was like, that's how that happened. Right?
Was it almost like you were kind of realizing all the loopholes these people were moving towards to just shove us out of the way?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me the policies?
Sure. So the main, there was a series before that, but the main thing that kind of got us to where we are in the modern day is in 2014, there was a fund created here in the city, and it was called the Gateway Street Projects Fund. And it was created without a vote of the people. And so what it does is it takes what's called franchise fees. When you pay your utility fees, there's a part of that called the franchise fee for any utility you pay. And what that is those companies have to pay the city for the right to use the right-of-ways for their cables and whatever else. And so 40% of those franchise fees that we pay go into this fund. And again, without a vote, once it had built up a certain amount of money, they took that money, the city council at that time, and went to about 5 developers out on the west side of town and used that money to start building Milwaukee out from 34th to 98 and several other road projects in the southwest. And so then that's why that boom
All this development out there.
happened.
Catalina West, the housing out there, the West End started like booming.
Right.
There's a hospital out there now.
Right. So what effectively happened without a vote of the people is still today, by the way, because we're not done paying for Milwaukee until 2025 and the rest fall off shortly after that. But this entire time and until 2025, districts 1, 2, and 3 are paying for roads in districts 4, 5, and 6 they probably hardly ever use. And so that's outside of that being really not ethical. The other problem it created was you're having to build outside of the main city infrastructure when you build those new developments. So you got to build roads, you got to build sewer, you got to build electricity. And what was happening prior to us coming on the scene was the city was fronting all of that. They were paying for all of that road to be built out, all the sewer, all the electric, and the developers were just essentially having to just sell their land and build it up. That's it. So the first kind of advocacy thing we did as Lubbock Compact was impact fees. And this problem, this sort of situation is not unique to Lubbock. And so what impact fees are used for is when a city starts doing that, it helps that growth pay for itself. And so if a city charges maximum impact fees, then the developers would pay half and the taxpayers would pay half for that project. And so it was a big fight. That was actually the first time we tried to do a petition process. And obviously much different issue, much less people care about that, so we didn't get the signatures, but we were still able to get the policy. Just from a heavy media campaign, I was on the news all the time. They would have me come on. They essentially had us arguing with developers, but just not in the same room, right? Like I would come on and they would come on. It was a big thing. And so the developers wanted to have no impact fees, period. And so once they realized that we were going to win that there was going to be impact fees, there's 2 kind of impact fees. There's road impact fees, and then there's the wastewater impact fees. So they were like, all right, fine. Well, let's just do the road impact fees. Let's not do the wastewater fees. Well, that's not going to be good for the city down the line. It's fine for right now. But we were able to get the wastewater in there, but set to 0. And that's fine for now. But here in about 10, 15 years, we're probably going to have to tweak that and tweak it up. The other thing about the impact fees that we wanted maximum impact fees. So the city would pay half, developers pay half. But how it played out after that whole fight was for every dollar the developers pay, the citizens pay 3. And so it's not the best situation. But the good news is that later on down the road, that can always be tweaked.
It's like that seed is planted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was the first policy change we were able to create, but it's also a huge one for our city because it was not sustainable the way we were growing out there.
And this started because of that report you read.
Right.
And it's just a continuing fight.
Yeah, just a continuation, yeah.
Yeah. So when these things happen, is there like malicious intent or are these people just trying to make money?
I don't know that there's necessarily malicious intent.
Maybe that was the wrong word.
Right. It's a lot about money. It's a lot about money, but where they choose to do that, I think, is more of a cultural thing.
Like privilege.
Right.
Privilege.
Right. That's where they live. That's where they live at. They don't live in the older parts of town in historic East Lubbock or North Lubbock or even Central Lubbock. They live out there. They have their big houses out there. They want the stuff out there, right? And so I don't know that it's necessarily malicious. I think it's just, opportunistic, and it's a lot about money.
They used to. Like on East Lubbock where Martin Luther King Jr. is?
Yes.
My dad said that it used to all be white neighborhoods.
Right.
Way, way back
Yeah,
then.
so there was actually an ordinance in 1923 in the city of Lubbock where black people and Hispanic people could not live outside of those 2 areas where we predominantly still live at today. Could not. Unless...
So they contained them in there?
Yes, unless it was segregation. Unless you worked in the house of a white person, then you could live somewhere else in town. But that was the law for a long time. And then after that, so what it stated in that law, real quick, was that the people themselves, black and Hispanic people themselves, were pollutants, that we dirtied up the environment. And so that's why you needed to separate them out from good neighborhoods. And then when you fast forward to the 40s, when those industrial sites started getting put in over there, the reason they got put there is because they were doing what's called the land use plan. And they do this every so often to figure out how is the city going to use the land we have. And it has a lot to do with the zoning, like what can be next to what and all of that kind of stuff. So in that 1943, I think, land use plan, they said, well, you don't put these types of facilities next to good neighborhoods. And so since you're already building on a precedent, you put them in those neighborhoods. And that's why they're there. It's also a big issue that we continue to fight as Lubbock Compact. We've made some headway, but that's going to be a long, hard fight. But yeah, back in the day, it was absolutely based off of malicious intent and very racial. But in the modern times, I think it's, a lot of these people don't even remember any of that. I think it's just because off of the back of all of that, they've built up their wealth and they just happen to live in this area now. And it's more so about just, I guess, preserving their area, right?
Well, because the area that I live at, that wasn't considered Lubbock. It was called Carlisle.
Yep.
So I'm pretty sure that's why a lot of blacks and Hispanics moved over there, because that wasn't Lubbock.
Right.
And that's all Friendship District, still is today. So I'm pretty sure that's why all that whole neighborhood became what it is today.
Yeah.
But now they're trying to. It feels like, because now there's 1,000 homes that are built in front of us. So you have the new neighborhood, and then we live in the old neighborhood. And like what we saw was, we have a dirt road in front of us. They're starting to pave it now, but what they did was, when that neighborhood first was built, they only paved half the road, and on our side of the road, they donated that to the city. So I guess the developers didn't have to worry about it. They had the city worry about it.
But literally, like where his road is, it's like county road, and then it's like really nice residential park down the middle of the street.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like it is literally like you are standing on new land and then old Lubbock.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's insane.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's really, it doesn't make sense the way we do a lot of things, and this is one of the things that Lubbock Compact really works on, is trying to get us to do things a little more wisely when it comes to growth. And how do we do that?
So yeah, how do we get these 180,000 people who registered to vote to actually get involved?
Well, it's there's not an easy answer, but I know that one thing that we have to do, we have to get through to people to make them understand the power that you're leaving on the table, because that's what it is. It's a power. It's, a lot of people, we hear the word vote so many times that maybe it's a little cheap in people's minds, but it really is a power that we have. And if we don't use that, we're leaving a lot of our power on the table for others to take.
To that 95%?
Yep, and others will take it. And then when it comes down to making decisions, because they voted all of their people in, when it comes down to make decisions for your neighborhood, how much do you think they're going to care? That's not their experience. They live in such a bubble that they have no clue what your life is like.
It's almost like we can't fault them.
That's how I feel almost.
Right.
When
And
you're saying this.
so our issue is kind of twofold. We don't vote, and then we don't raise up candidates, because it really doesn't do us a lot of good to raise up a bunch of voters and then they only got the same options. They're not going to want that. And so we've got a lot of work to do. We do have a lot of people that are capable of being candidates. And a lot of the times what people will say is, oh, I'm not sure I'm qualified to be a candidate. I can tell you right now, every single one of those people in that office is not qualified to be a candidate. There is no qualification. There's no set criteria that you have to meet. In my mind, what makes you a good candidate and a good servant leader is, do you have a heart for the community, and do you have it in you to listen to them and vote for what they want you to vote for, regardless of how you may feel or what other influences may be pressuring you. And so, I would just really try to get that across to people, but also, in my case, since I'm a candidate running for office, that's on me to go and get in front of as many people as I can and have them meet me and let let them ask me questions and figure out who I am and see, am I different from the others? Do you see the same thing with me that you do with them? Because a lot of people don't, right? And so I actually come from the community. It wasn't even my idea to run for mayor. So when we started doing all of this work with Lubbock Compact, a lot of just people in the community were like, you should run for office. And I thought that was ridiculous. Like, I just completely didn't even respond to it. Because like I said, I was 39 years old, had just barely registered to vote, like, and you're asking me to run for office. Like, yeah, right. And then a lot of community leaders started kind of saying it in passing. And I would blow it off like, oh, okay, yeah, thanks, but whatever, right? Then it started being actual sit-down interventions where community leaders would say, hey, come to lunch, come to dinner, I want to talk to you. And they laid out their case of why they wanted me to run. And so at that point, I really started to take it serious because these are people whose opinions I really value and who I respect.
Did
And
part of you say, why don't you run?
yeah. I mean, some of them had,
Okay.
and so, yeah, but yeah, that's a good point. And so it took me 3 months, like, of just meditation, soul searching, all of those things because I had never done anything like that. Like, who am I? Who am I to get up and run? Right. But then I started to realize, like, based on what they were telling me, like, okay, I get it. Like, I can come in here and I can create change, and I think I can do this. And so it took me 3 months to really make that decision to run. And so that's why I'm even running. But it's better to have, in my mind, it's better to have candidates that kind of come up that way versus the way that a lot of these candidates normally come up.
Are they propped up?
They are
by
propped
money?
up. Right. They're chosen way ahead of time. So in that vein, a lot of the people are right when they were like, oh, they already decided. Yeah, they decided who their candidate was. We need to decide who our candidate is. And then we got to compete, right? The way that I explain it to people is what's happening right now. Let's say you walk up to a basketball court. Right now, there's only one team on there. We're not even on the court. We're on the sideline, complaining about it, watching it happen, not getting involved. We're not even on the court. So voting is just part of it to get on the court. Then we got to compete. We got to start putting up our candidates. We got to start really competing. And, I think that's what people need to understand. We just leave so much power on the table.
Do you know what the demographic of Lubbock is by percentage?
Yeah. So the black population here is only about 8%. Hispanic population is around 32%. And white population is like a little over 60% of our population.
Damn. Only 2% Asian.
Yeah, or other. Yeah.
And do you find typically the black, Asian, Hispanic tend to vote the same? Like,
for the most part. With the Hispanic population in particular, it depends on where you're at in the city. A lot of the Hispanic population in some of the more affluent parts of the city a lot of times tend to lean to the right or tend to vote Republican. And from what I see at least, I think a lot of it is a cultural thing as well. They start to, it's the job
I hate
they
to
have.
say it, they want to be white.
Well, it's the job they have. It's the people they're around, so whatever it is, there's an influence there, right? And
you gotta know a lot of these people grew up in a different time and they had to assimilate.
mm,
Like, I know plenty of older women who have white passing names because their family did not want them to grow through certain traumas. So certain people are just, I think, conditioned to just assimilate and just do that. You know what I mean?
right.
That's why my dad didn't want to name us like Mexicano names.
Dang.
That's why I'm a Bradley, and there's Shane,
Shaner.
Robbie, Michael. Like we didn't have,
And it really is for protection, I think,
because
sometimes from those parents.
my dad's always claimed that's why, or he didn't teach us Spanish at first because he was made fun of for having a Spanish accent.
Yeah.
And so they learned it. My brothers learned it later on. I still barely know
You
it.
don't know it.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's just how it is, I guess.
Wait,
I mean,
But I know somebody I used to work with, and she was older. She's probably like 44 now, but
yeah.
her parents gave her like a whiter passing name
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't want her to sound Hispanic, and they chose not to teach her Spanish because they didn't want her to go to school bilingual.
But what's crazy too is like my parents' birth certificate. There was no such thing as Hispanic or Latino.
They put
It was
white.
it was white.
They
Yeah,
put white. Yep.
So in their birth certificate it says they're white.
That's why I'm glad I do these podcasts, because I try to understand these things. I try to be as understanding as possible.
Yeah.
My parents are a little younger, and they didn't grow up like that. So I got to understand it kind of is two different Hispanics in this town.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting.
Yeah.
We're all trying to commingle and do our own thing, you know. I
Right.
don't know.
Right. Yeah.
That's why I love talking to people.
Yeah.
Like, let me hear it,
Yeah.
because I could never understand that world. That is like, I grew up around white people. That's all I grew up around.
Yeah.
You know, never felt that way.
Right.
Thank God, I guess, you know, but not everybody's the same.
Right.
It really does go back like to history. You know? Just that started back then, and now it's this. Now I'm starting to understand. I don't think it's so. It is just cultural.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't think these white people now, you know, just are evil and mean and racist. It's just the way they are. Like Jen said earlier, damn, I don't even want to fault them. That's just the way it is. God
Yeah.
damn.
You know, it's weird talking to my older family because one time I had asked my uncle, who he's now in his 70s, and I was like, "So did y'all were y'all scared back then? Were y'all fear?" And he goes, "No, there was no such thing as fear. We didn't fear anything. If there was a place that you didn't belong in, you just didn't belong in there. It wasn't like we saw that place and we were just like, oh, we're scared to go in there.
Yeah. You just don't
You
go
just
there.
you just didn't go.
Yeah.
That's just the way it was back then.
Yeah.
But I've heard some crazy stories about the schools that they went to, how when they started to date white girls in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of these girls their parents were part of the school boards, and like they would come to our house to warn them to stay away from my daughter and stuff like that. And it's like, man, if like members from a school board now were to do that, it'd be a completely different story.
Right. And a lot of people don't know so my dad he just turned 66, and he told us he physically with his own eyes saw still the signs in some of the shop windows that said no dogs or Mexicans allowed.
Yeah.
It's getting too loud.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm trying to
No, you're good.
bring a little comedy into this
Yeah.
podcast, but
Yeah.
you know, God damn, man, that's
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thankfully, we have guys like you, and we have podcasts, and we can get the message out there.
Yeah, we could do something different now. And that's another thing that I like to tell people about voting, because I do like to read a lot about history. And I think I've been thinking a lot about this lately because, back during the civil rights era and just prior to that, like black and brown people literally got killed. If I was to be doing this back in the 40s or 50s, I would have went missing. Right? You could not do this. You could not get involved in political activities. You couldn't run for office. You couldn't even go vote because they understood the power in that. And they didn't want you to have that power. Little did they know, they didn't even have to beat us and kill us and do all that. All they had to do was give us the full rights to do it, and we'll keep ourselves out.
That's the story of it now, huh? Yeah, right now.
And it's sad.
It is sad.
So that's what I'm trying to get people to understand. If it wasn't powerful, if it didn't do something, why would they do all that? Why do they gerrymander the districts and try to keep you out of the process? Why? If it doesn't matter. So that's what we really got to get people to understand.
Well, I'll be damned, man. I don't know, man. I feel like I'm 26. I feel like these kids don't give a fuck. They don't care. You ask them about Kim Kardashian and who the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers is. They don't care about what's going on in their hometown.
I've always voted since I was 18, since I had the right to. But I think like the only time I've ever like truly felt like so like broken about the voting system was this last year when we were all voting about like the Roe versus Wade thing, and I saw lots of infographics, lots of angry fellow friends sharing the same shit, but I didn't see anybody I knew when it was time to vote. And then when the stats came out and the age groups came out,
It's pretty much the same as the mayor vote, probably.
don't bother sharing that shit if you're not gonna go vote.
That's why I'm willing to have
And
you on here.
it was heartbreaking because I just heard from the men around me, it is what it is. I'm like, Not really. Not fucking the women around me. It sucks. Yeah, it does. You just never know, especially on like a local platform, just the rights we have here in our state, or even, I don't know. It was that's the only time I've ever been truly heartbroken.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I saw like those stats.
I'm still harping on this. There's 186,000 people registered to vote. That is not the problem. I thought that was a problem.
No.
That's more than almost
More
three-fourths.
than enough.
That's 3/4 of the population.
On
That's what I'm saying. I
God
mean,
damn. That's really
but
disappointing.
that's also why, like, just going to vote matters, even if it seems like I don't even like this person or whatever. I mean, hey, man, you just never know.
It depends so much on who's in that seat. And, just to put it in real simple terms, if you have to go and deal with some specific person to get something done, and when we're talking about policy in your city, you're going to have to go and deal with your city council. That's who you got to deal with. They're the ones in charge. That's how the system works, right? So it's a different story if you go there and that person don't care about you, don't have no clue about your experience, and maybe a little bit of an asshole, right? That matters, just like anywhere else, right? But if you go up to that person and that person at least can have empathy for your situation, or even better, if they know about your situation and all of that, and they genuinely listen to you, that's a completely different experience. How do they get there? By votes. And in Lubbock, there have absolutely been votes that were decided by less than 5 votes. People have been mayor before with a margin of 15 votes.
Gosh.
Right here in Lubbock. So when you talk about it doesn't matter, it could literally be your vote that's the one that matters.
Damn.
Well, I'll be damned.
On Joe Rogan's first Netflix stand-up, he has a joke where how all these people were all about, at the time, it was all about Bernie Sanders, stuff like that. And when you ask them, well, did you vote, bro? And that person responds, voting doesn't exist, bro. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I heard a lot of that, like, during, like, the Trump and Clinton, like, presidential whatever, you know what I mean? It was like, oh, they both suck. And I'm like, I know, pick the one that sucks less, dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally in our hands. I don't know.
It's that, but we live in a world now where people think their true vote is sharing the story on
Right.
No,
on
that's what I'm saying.
It's-
I don't give a shit what the pastel looking infographic says. Go vote.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't care that's on your story and you shared every single slide of it. I educated myself. Now I know who I'm going to vote for. That's what that does. But
because we know plenty of people like that.
but
that
it's
are just very vocal, but they
it's
don't.
a fad to seem like you care,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that sucks.
That's-
Well,
What is
so
it?
to bring a little bit of light in here, right? Because there is a light. I feel like there's a light, and I guess sometimes I might be a little unreasonably optimistic, but I'm hard-headed. I'm determined to
We
turn
have to
this
be.
around, right? I'm determined. And so when we were just at the fair with the Freedom Act the whole week, and it wasn't about my campaign, but sometimes the volunteers would be there and they're really excited about me and stuff like that. And so they would tell people, yeah, he's running for mayor too. So you'll be able to vote for this. You'll be able to vote for him for mayor. And so I did notice it would raise a lot of people's eyebrows. Like, oh, really? Like, there's a candidate here in Lubbock that supports this, right? Like, and then they wouldn't really say nothing. Well, we went to go and we went on Sunday to go clean up our stuff for our booth after the fair was all over and all that. And it's just middle of the morning, we're there, and somebody calls out, and they're like, hey, we look up, and they're like, how do we vote for mayor? And we're like, well, we were just kind of telling them how it works and all that. They were like, yeah, sorry, like, I've never voted before in my life. And they were like, but we want to vote for Adam for mayor. And so there is something happening where we're getting through to some people, right? For whatever reason that may be. I do try to talk a lot of places. I'm on a lot of different media all the time. And so who knows where people may have heard me from, or maybe they met me there at the fair and we had a conversation. But there are people that are starting to think like, maybe there is something in it for me if I go and vote. So I think we have a real shot to turn it around.
Well, if there's one issue, people want the legalization of marijuana.
Yes.
Or in this case,
Decriminalization.
There
Yep.
you go. That's what the Freedom Act is?
Yep. Freedom Act Lubbock. Yeah.
Can you explain to me the process of how you could get this passed?
Right. So how we can do this in our city charter, there's a section in there called referendum and recall. And you can do 2 things with that section. You can recall a council person if you don't like what they're doing. and both things require you to get signatures. So the number changes. So you can recall your council person, or you can do a referendum, which just means the citizens write an ordinance that they want the city council to look at and vote on. Because normally you can't, like, nobody can just like walk into Citizens Tower and say, I'd like you guys to vote on this, and then they're just going to take it up. That's not how it works. If you, like, sometimes through our advocacy work, we're able to have a meeting with a council person, and then that way the council person will put it, get it on the agenda. But a lot of people don't really have that access or even know how to do that, right? But what you can do is you can write your own ordinance, and you can collect a certain amount of signatures, and then they have to take it up for a vote. And so the city charter says that you have to get 25% of the voter turnout in the last municipal election, which was, for us, would be the one I ran in May of 2022. And so based on those numbers of the turnout, we have to get a little over 4,800 signatures that are valid, meaning they're registered to vote inside the city limits of Lubbock. And so if we are able to get that amount of signatures that are valid, the city council has to take it up. They don't have a choice in the matter. So they'll take it up, and here our city council has to do 2 readings. That just means they got to vote on it twice. They usually will do that one in 1 month, and then the next month do the second one, and then it's done. Should they vote that down, whatever the citizens have brought forward, then the initiating committee, which is us, who filed the paperwork to start the petition, then we have the option to put it on a ballot, which we absolutely will. It's the same exact process that happened when they made Lubbock wet
Oh, that's what I'm about to
in
ask.
2009, and it's the same exact process when they voted on the sanctuary city for the unborn ordinance here in the city. Same exact process.
So you think this is what's going to happen?
So this is absolutely what's going to happen. So,
Well, can I ask you
yeah,
something
go ahead.
before?
Yeah.
Do the council people, they don't want to look bad? Like, I'm guessing they're conservative, and I'm guessing they're like anti-weed.
That's our feeling. Well, I mean, they're definitely, a lot of them are definitely self-proclaimed conservatives.
Okay, yeah.
Some of them harder right than others, but they're in that vein. So we definitely think culturally they're probably, they have a constituency that's probably not going to really want them to do that. And then, for whatever reason, we just believe that they're going to vote it down. Just knowing the council members, we may get a couple of yes votes, if any. But we're pretty sure they're going to vote
Well, it almost
that down.
seems like if you get this 25%, it's going to pass, because I'm guarantee all of Lubbock will vote on that.
Yeah. So yeah, if it goes to the ballot, what's been happening? So it's been done in 6 other cities, same exact process, same one for every city, and the city councils voted it down, and it went to a ballot. And so in Austin, San Marcos, Denton, Harker Heights, Killeen, and Elgin, before here, it has passed the same way. And in all those cities, it passed 60 to 70% when it went to the people for a vote.
That's why.
Well, I believe all 3 of us here are registered. Well, I know Bradley is. Are you?
I sure am.
Well, let's sign this thing.
Awesome.
I just checked. I am. How do you check? Because I did it with you just now.
Yep. So you just got to put your printed name, signature, address, and date of birth.
Okay.
So to check if you're registered to vote in the city of Lubbock, anybody can do this. You can pull out your phone, do it right now. You go to votelubbock.org. When that website pulls up, at the very top, there's like a little pink section. And at the very top, it'll say voter information lookup. You click on that, and then it'll have you put your first name, last name, and date of birth. If nothing pops up when you hit submit, you're not registered to vote. If something pops up, you're registered to vote. And if you aren't registered to vote and you want to get registered to vote before this goes on the ballot in May, then you can come see me and many people on our team. We are voter deputy registrars, so we can actually register you to vote.
And do you want me to sign it?
Yep, signature
Okay.
right there under your printed name there.
Okay.
And that's it. Perfect.
Sweet. There you go. I myself am not a smoker, but I believe it should be.
Right, and we've heard this a lot, and really, so at the heart of this ordinance, what we're trying to get people to understand, because a lot of people don't, and that's fine, right? But the heart of the ordinance is decriminalization, which means somebody wouldn't go to jail for it if they have a personal use amount. So our ordinance says 4 ounces and below, they wouldn't get a ticket, wouldn't go to jail. You also wouldn't get a ticket or go to jail for paraphernalia, which is you would now, right? And then an officer can't use the smell of marijuana alone as a probable cause for a search. And so that's the basis of it. But But the heart of the idea is so that just people, we don't believe people should go to jail for personal use marijuana, whatever the reason may be, whether they use that recreationally or whether they use it medically, whatever the case may be, we don't think they should go to jail for it here in the city of Lubbock. And so that's really what it's about.
not.
Yeah, that's what it's really about. And we've had a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't smoke. Well, fine. Do you know anybody who does? And they're like, oh yeah, my son, my whatever, right? And well, do you want them to go to jail? No. Okay, sign the petition. So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, just 90 miles to the west, it's legal. You won't go to jail for it. That's what's crazy. That's,
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
And it's just like the smallest like little movement, but it's like, why would something that has already been proven to be like medicinal or like therapeutic or whatever, why should it be like life altering if you get caught with it? You know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
And I'm guessing historically they were using that to arrest and make money essentially off minorities, right?
Yeah, so there's a long history of why marijuana was even illegal in the first place. And of course, like many things in this country, it started out behind racial reasons. In the 90s, that really got ramped up, right?
Reagan?
With the Clinton
Oh, Clinton.
and
The crime bill.
the
Sorry,
94
that's the one I was
crime bill,
thinking
the infamous 94 crime bill, right? And prior to that, it was Reagan. Prior to that was Nixon. That kind of started us on this path of criminalizing it to the degree it is, but also along that path during the crack era of the 80s, prior to that in the jazz era, prior to that because Mexican immigrants were coming over to the States after the Mexican Revolution was over. And so you always kind of had this mixing of like the criminality of it with the racial tones of it, right? And so that's kind of what led us here. And nowadays, of course, it's not so much like that, but you still have that stigma. Nancy Reagan did that whole just say no and dare campaign and all of that stuff. And she really did a good job because a lot of people really got scared into thinking that marijuana is the same as heroin or meth. And it's just simply not. It's not even if somebody is drunk, if you've seen somebody sloppy drunk and you've seen somebody that's, just smoked a whole blunt or something, like it's not even the same. It's just simply not the same.
Oh, no, it's
Yeah.
not. No, it's not.
I am. Hey man, I am
Nah, I just it's,
chilling.
for the simple fact, I'm a drinker. I know how much worse. I've known people who kill people because they were drinking. So I'm like, yeah, why the fuck would this shit be illegal, man? Come on. Now.
Yeah.
It's wild seeing what you were talking about, like in the 30s when the Mexicans were coming over here at that time. How like there's these newspapers talking about how they're bringing over spicy tobacco.
Right.
It's like what the hell?
Yeah, and then in the jazz era, first of all, prior to the 1900s, early 1900s, after the Mexican Revolution was over and Mexicans started coming over, prior to that time, weed was never a problem in the U.S. As a matter of fact, in the colonies, they used
They
it for
grew it.
legal tender. And in Virginia, you had to grow a certain percentage because they would use it for foods and ropes and
The first
fibers.
president did it, right?
Yeah,
That's what George Washington
Yeah, and
did.
so it was never a problem. And then even as they started expanding west, you had French immigrants coming and smoking hashish, which is like a paste form of it. And
I
so
wouldn't know. I don't know.
yeah, so there was no problem with it, right? There was no public outcry and all of this until the Mexican immigrants started coming over and they brought it over and we were calling them marijuana, right? And at the same time they were coming over and they were demonizing it, U.S. citizens all over the United States had it in their medicine cabinet labeled cannabis because it was used for medicines for a long time.
Have you seen those cough syrup bottles? They had all
Yeah.
kinds of it had meth, all kinds of stuff
Right.
in it.
And so that's when it started becoming a problem. And then when the jazz era came and black people started using it, now it's really a problem, right? And they would even push the narrative that it made black men violent and overtly sexual towards white women. And they warned white women not to smoke it because it was going to make them want to have sex with black men. And if you don't believe me, they had congressional hearings about it, and those talking points got brought up in those congressional hearings back then.
Yeah, look at
Wild
this.
how ignorant.
Yeah, look at these ingredients right here.
Chloroform. Holy.
Oh, nice.
Morphia.
Cannabis indica, some alcohol in there. You got a little bit of
Got a little bit of
chloroform.
everything.
Boy, we would be out. God damn. It's wild all the history behind like all of this.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, and so I've given a couple of talks on the history of it. It's a lot longer talk, obviously, but I've given this a couple of places because of that stigma, and I'm trying to get people to understand, where does that even come from? Why do you feel that way about this substance?
Even old Mexicans feel that way,
Right.
which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. We had, unfortunately, when we were block walking for this petition, we were going door to door in the north side in the Arnett Benson neighborhood. There was actually two guys that said this and pretty much said the same thing. But we roll up on a guy and he comes to the door and we tell him what we're there for. And he's like, oh, no, I don't smoke. And we're like, well, it's not really about, you smoking it. It's just to keep people out of jail. Do you know anybody close to you that uses this? And he's like, oh, yeah, my son does it. I want him in jail. It's just a matter of time. I'm like, oh, have a nice day,
Unfortunately,
sir.
that mentality exists, huh?
Yeah, so we have had some of those. It's been pretty rare, thankfully, but you do have some folks that are just, just whip themselves in such a frenzy, over this substance and really don't have the information. They don't have a lot of the information.
Is the next voting in November?
So there will be some state amendments in November.
Oh.
So there will be an election in November. This would be on the May ballot.
Oh, in May.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, you got some more time. Mm-hmm. Dang, there you go.
So we only have 60 days to collect our signatures. We're actually in the last 2 weeks. So we filed the paperwork on August 18th, and we have until October 18th to get our.
Shit, we'll have to
yeah.
get this podcast out very soon. Then.
Yeah, and so we're shooting for 8,500 signatures, even though we only need the 4,800. The reason being is we're verifying those as we go to make sure they're registered, and our validity rate is at a 60%, which means for every 100 signatures that we get, 60 are going to be good. And so,
overcompensate.
right, so we got to overcompensate, and so that's where we get the 8,500 number. We're already at about 6,000 today, and we've been out of tech all day, so and we'll be all throughout the community for these next 2 weeks, getting those extra 2,500.
I just can't believe it's such an issue. I just cannot believe it. Well, actually, I can, but golly.
And the thing I'd like people to know too about this, because we've had a lot of people that have had hesitancy to sign it, because they wonder what would their friends think? What would my boss think? What would my pastor think? Well, I can tell you right now, we've had pastors sign this. We've had LPD officers sign this. We've had sheriff's deputies sign it, a justice of the peace. We've had nurses, teachers,
Even they want it
doctors,
passed, huh?
lawyers.
Well, they probably see how life ruining that is for a person.
Shit, they probably smoke.
Like, can you imagine a police officer who probably was a former pot smoker before they decided to become a police officer having to do their job, putting the full weight of the law on this person because they had a J on them?
Because it's their job, man. Damn.
That's where
Yeah.
that empathy goes in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
But
And
to
it,
me-
and it happens
What-
700 times a year right here in Lubbock.
Didn't something just pass about Delta 8 here?
that I'm not sure.
I think
No,
so.
so Delta 8,
They upheld it.
What was happening there was Charles Perry, Senator Charles Perry, that's from here, for whatever reason decided way after the fact to start going against Delta 8, I think last year or something. And he it was very unpopular for him. A lot of veterans groups in Texas came out against him because a lot of them use it for PTSD or whatever they're dealing with. And so nothing has really become of it, but he was essentially trying to outlaw Delta 8 as well.
That's what it was.
But the thing about, so we see 700% of these arrests every year here in Lubbock. The one of the things we deal with at Lubbock Compact is disparity. So we deal with how we use our city resources, which is one problem with this. And that's why we have so many officers that are willing to sign it, because they see it from that perspective too. How long it takes them off the street to go mess with this person that had a joint in their car or, whatever, right? So there's that part of it. The city resources part of it. Also on the resource side, our DA is very short on prosecutors, and they've got a long backlog of cases. We don't need to be clogging that up with the 700 small weed cases, right? We got much more serious things to do. On the other side, we deal with disparity here in the city and trying to address issues. And so when we look at the arrest data, so we've got the arrest data, and if you go to the website, freedomactlubbock.org, you can see the marijuana impact report for Lubbock, Texas. And so what that shows us is that who is getting arrested here in the city. Even though we have the statistics and the data that shows that per capita, marijuana use is actually higher in white communities than any other community. But here in Lubbock, 8% of the population is black. They represent 30% of these arrests. 31% of the population is Hispanic. We represent 43% of these arrests. White people are 60+% of the population. They represent 22% of these arrests. And so there's a huge disparity there just in terms of racial makeup. But then you look at where these arrests are happening in the city. And we actually have a heat map that shows that it's along the I-27 corridor. It literally hugs I-27 and then the northeast quadrant of the city. This is where most of our communities of color actually live. And so it's and then on top of all of that, most of the arrests are young people here in the city. People 18 to 34 years old represent 73% of these arrests.
Are these felony cases?
No, they're just Class A and Class B misdemeanor
Oh, yeah,
arrests.
yeah,
But
that's what you said.
so if somebody's going to tech, for instance, and they're going for law school or medical school, and they get caught with a little joint on them, that could derail their whole entire career. And so we're not only disproportionately targeting people of color, we're then now derailing our young people's lives at a time when we really need to be trying to figure out how do we keep our young people here? How do we keep them here when they leave tech? And we're not going to keep them here from, by locking them up for stuff like this.
This is something I wanted to talk to you about because that's what we're trying to do here is keep people here. Maybe like on the art side of it, like building a community there. How do we keep people here? What do you think?
Well, a big part of it is our city leadership. There's things that can be done on a city leadership level to keep people here. And it's a big part of my campaign. We're going to be kind of streamlining the campaign here in the next few weeks. But basically, at the root of my platform for this campaign is doing things to, first of all, for the people who already live here, also to keep people here. And so we spend a lot of money. We have like Lita and Market Lubbock, which spend a lot of money and time to draw businesses here from outside of the city and outside of the state, which is great. We want all that kind of stuff. But we rarely want to invest properly in our parks or in our mental health or trying to address the situation of homelessness here in the city. And all of these things are kind of tied together. In the quality of life thing, our animal control services has been an issue for a long, long time. We literally have packs of dogs running through neighborhoods, people getting attacked. There was literally a man eaten to death by dogs like not that long ago.
I remember that.
And so, there's various things we can do to improve the quality of life here for the people who live here and the people who we want to keep here. And another big thing we could do is make the city a lot more walkable. A lot more of the younger generation want more walkable, more community-based areas to live in, not, everything spread 10 or 15 minutes apart,
As a runner, I would love to run through my city. That's what I like to do for the mayor's marathon. And there's not really safe places to like get it, it's just not, it's not constructed for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If you get elected mayor, are you going to run a marathon?
Am I going to run in the man? Probably not. They might make me though, but I suck so bad at running. I can walk. I can walk.
Hey, that counts.
I can walk forever.
Hey, that counts.
So I might be the last one, but I can walk it and be fine. I just can't
A
run.
man of the people.
Yeah.
There you go. Shit.
Yeah. I'll be behind y'all. I'll be the last one to come in.
Yeah. I said I wanted to do it. That ain't gonna happen.
But yeah.
Hell no.
Yeah. I know somebody that ran it. I was like, yeah, I can't do that.
Oh man. Yeah, man. Making Lubbock more walkable would be pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you start? Downtown?
Definitely downtown needs a lot of attention. There's other areas of the city we could do this in. A
May
good,
Simmons?
yeah, definitely. A good kind of model for kind of what's an ideal situation is if you are familiar with the area that's at like 26th and Boston. It's where J&B
Oh, it's pretty nice
is and
over
Food King. Very walkable. There's a nice park there. And
Good Line Beer.
yeah, right. And you see all of that foot traffic there or people coming there, because it's easily accessible in the neighborhood, all of that kind of stuff. So situations like that, just making things a little more pedestrian friendly and then, making the environment here in the city one that's a lot more inclusive in various ways.
Bradley, can you tell me the story about that park that you told us
So
with the rides?
the
cars.
that park, you know how it looks like a big old circle, but there's a lot of like blocks, and you got to go like these weird routes. Like how like certain parts you can't circle it like the way
What are
you
you
used
talking
to.
about?
That
The-
park that's by
on-
J&B. I don't know what the park's
You can't do a
called.
full circle.
Oh, yeah, I think that's the That might be the Tech Terrace part.
Yeah, it's the Tech Terrace
Yeah.
part. But that's where they used to do a lot of cruising. Apparently, a lot of cars would hang out there. This is like 70s and 80s when they were doing this. But all the people at the time complained about it, and my dad was saying that it was a lot of Mexican car clubs, where all the people that were living there didn't like that, and so when they complained, they put these weird ways where you can't circle it anymore.
Right.
Like if you want to go to a different part, you have to like go into the neighborhood, like turn. You have to go like different
I know what you're
ways.
talking about. It's
yeah.
like all blocked
Yeah,
off.
I thought that was interesting. I always wondered why it was like that.
Yeah,
It's so weird.
Yeah.
But apparently it was because all these car clubs were hanging out and they didn't like that. So
Right.
Fucking A, man. Jesus. A lot
So
of
do you
weird.
do like any work with like the East Lubbock Art House and stuff?
Yes, I do know Danielle very well, and I mean, I'm very involved with the community in various ways.
I
and,
haven't gotten a chance to go to any of their things just because it's always like during my work hours or I've got a podcast. But I have seen just some of these things that they offer, and I applaud them just, for like really using that platform and, like hosting things in that side of in that side of town. I think
Yeah.
that's really awesome.
Yeah, she does a lot of great work. Her and her board over there. I mean,
That's somebody you
yeah.
need to get on here.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Her name is Danielle East.
Danielle.
Will you look
Yep.
up the East Lubbock Art House on Instagram?
Yep.
yeah,
That's on
I've
MLK.
I've met her before. Doesn't she do the community fridge?
Yep, she does the
Yeah,
community
yeah.
fridges. Yep.
There was recently a thing they did. It was like a depression management or something like that, and it was just like, I respect it, man.
They're doing a haunted house.
Mm-hmm.
They're the 21st.
Yep, she does a lot of programming, and she also does things to help people just on an individual level, like like she's had grant writer workshops. She's had like workshops to teach people how to like, start a business, like how to start an organization. Like she really does try to help people on all levels. They're really great over there. One of our favorite organizations.
Yeah.
Depression
there's that
management.
depression management. There was one a while back. I'm gonna
And
keep
that's
scrolling.
Danielle up there. That's her right there. Yep, that's Danielle.
Yeah, we got to get her on here.
Yeah, they just do a lot for their community and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
just think it's
Yeah. This
So you
one's
think
on
it's
there.
going to be all right here?
I think it's going to be
I
all
mean, we
right.
got-
I think that, if, and I see it happening, I really am encouraged, especially the more I get around like the younger generations. And even as I'm talking to these kids in the middle school where I mentor at, like you can just tell that, the younger generations are wanting to make change. If we, meaning me and others that have experience with this, as long as we kind of continue to guide them and coach them and give them the information they need, I fully believe they'll make it happen themselves. There's a lot of drive there and a lot of desire to change these things. So I think we'll be okay. We just got to really just continue the mission of trying to reach people and letting them know about the power. And that's where I start at. I start with those middle school groups because that's how I ended up being 39 years old and never registered to vote. In our houses, that's what we heard. We don't vote. And then we would listen to hip hop, and hip hop was like, we don't vote, and all of this. And so it's kind of really not much different for these kids. And so what I try to do is just even introduce the idea. Because in my world, when I was coming up, and that's what I tell them, I wish I had somebody to tell me. Because when I was in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I didn't even have anybody to come and insert the idea for me to vote. And so, we just got to start introducing it younger. We've got to start as adults, right? As adults who have children especially, is to ourselves make sure that we're using that power and then telling our kids. Because that's really where it starts, right? If mom and grandma and everybody goes and votes all the time and they're taking you with them and that's your experience, then you're much more likely to use that power, when you have the chance to. So.
And that's honestly exactly. I grew up with my mom being like, "Stand right here, I go vote," and like be the lady having to watch me at the table while my mom was at a ballot or whatever. But I remember that like 3 or 4 times during my childhood of stand right here. You know what I mean? But it was just a normal occurrence. So it's like when I was 18, not that I was like I get to go vote, but it was just like it's just what you do. You know what I mean?
Exercising your right as an American.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being in elementary school, especially during the '04 election when it was Bush and John Kerry. I remember as kids, like we had like a play vote.
Oh, nice.
Like
Yeah.
we had to
I
go
remember that
circle.
too.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
So, but I remember, especially the Bush years, my mom always talking about like we got to vote for Bush.
And it's like I was in middle school, high school when Obama got elected. So man, that's when I was like, I don't think y'all are my friends. You know, it's when like you started hearing these kids regurgitate what their parents were saying at the house, and that's when you're like,
Phew, I can only imagine.
okay, you know what I mean? It was
Yes, I
but
do.
it's now I understand they were just kids regurgitating what they were hearing, but
The Obama years were very interesting. There were a
Yes.
lot of interesting conversations,
Mm-hmm.
especially
yeah.
dealing
I was,
with race.
I was too young.
Yeah.
I don't remember really.
Yeah, because I think because the Obama and Mitt Romney election was my senior year, so I've voted every election since when was that? 2012.
Yeah.
Long
I,
ass time
yeah,
ago.
that was the
Yeah, we
first
got
time
an
I got
election
to
cycle
vote.
next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Damn. So when you go vote, do you have multiple days to do it?
Yeah, so here in Lubbock, we still have early voting. They tried to take this away at the state legislature this last time, but thankfully for us, Charles Perry, same senator that tried to get rid of Delta 8, actually did a good thing here because he actually likes to go to vote at United during early voting. And when you hear people from other states, especially, and even like from Houston and stuff like that, they come here and they're like, man, like it's so easy to vote here. He said, we can't go to the supermarket and vote during early voting. Like, that's not even a thing. And so we really do have it good here. There's 12 days of early voting that happen prior to the actual election day. And I tell people, like, first of all, get registered to vote. But when you go vote, when you make that decision, make it easier on yourself. Don't make it a bad experience. Go during the early voting because you can go to any United. You don't have to live near the United or whatever. Like, wherever United you're at, you can vote there, and you're going to be in and out much quicker during early voting. If you try to go on election day, it's going to be a huge line, and you can't go to United no more. It's different locations. It's going to be churches and schools and community centers and stuff like this. And they're going to be spread out all over the city. They're going to be harder to find. And so I encourage people to do the early voting. But it is very easy to vote here in Lubbock.
And you don't have to do anything special to do early voting, or
Nope.
No, just
as long as
show
you're
up.
registered to vote, you just show up. And the only thing that you'll ever need when you go to vote is your driver's license, your ID. That's it. That's all they're going to ask you for. So you go in there, they'll check you in with your ID. Well, if we do it the same way we did it this last time, you'll have a little paper ballot thing, or if not, it'll just be on the screen. But either way, it's pretty easy. And it's just, and the other thing that people should also understand is because, you know, we don't want to like overwhelm people, right? And if there's something that somebody feels strongly about and they want to vote on it, but they don't understand the other candidates, right? I don't know nothing about governor, I don't know, right? Or whatever it is. A lot of people don't understand that you can go in there and vote for one thing and leave the rest of that thing blank. There is no requirement for you to vote on every single thing. So if you don't know it, if you don't know the person, you're not comfortable doing that, skip it.
I did not know that.
Yeah, there was plenty
I
of
didn't
people.
know that either.
Yeah,
I'm all like,
yeah.
People,
that one's Mexican.
Right, and there was plenty of people in the November cycle that we saw over and over and over. All they did is go and vote for governor and then peace out, you know. And the ballot was long, right? So yeah, you don't have to vote for everything. So let's say you just want to vote for Freedom Act, and you don't even care about me running for mayor. You're like, get that guy out of here. I just want weed, right? All right, you could go in there and you could vote on. It's probably going to be called Proposition A or something like that on the ballot. You could just go in there and vote for that. Yes, boom, and leave.
but you only get one vote.
Only
Can't
get
go
one
back
vote.
and-
Yep, can't go back and vote again. So they wouldn't even let you if you try to go and check in
They'll
again.
arrest you, apparently. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it'll show us because like I said, I worked these, so I know how it works. If you let's say you voted at one United, and then the next day you go to another United and go try to vote, we're gonna know. It's gonna pull us up and let us know.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, maybe you were like, damn, I want to go vote for this guy now because I didn't the last one. Can't do that.
yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so if you wanted to vote for me and for Freedom Act, you would need to make that just selection on that same ballot.
Well, there you go, man. Well, I wish you good luck in this next mayor race. What is it called? Is that what we're going to call it?
Yep, mayoral election.
Mayoral election. There we go,
Yep.
that word. And this proposition, pretty exciting. I've seen you guys post up on some spots that I know, like season 3 and different locations, man. I hope.
Yeah, we've been to so many. I couldn't even name them all. You know, Kim, who's the director of the Freedom Act. She's also my girlfriend, but she's the director of the Freedom Act, and she filled up our schedule for these 60 days and continues to do so. I don't even know all the events we're at. We've been at the fair. We've been at Tacos and Tequila. We were at the Lubbock Live. We've been everywhere. So
Yeah, now knowing that y'all's thing's on the 18th, I have an event on the 21st. I would have invited you.
yeah.
Ed, I know you would have gotten.
Yep.
Are y'all going to be at the Papa Roach concert?
When is that one?
The October 10th.
October 10th. You know what? I think we just heard about this, and I'm pretty sure Kim's probably all over it.
Yeah, okay.
But,
That's the 10th. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
we did see that. I think we saw that sometime while we were at the fair, and we were like, "Oh, he's coming!" Yeah.
Oh,
should
that's a
probably do
Wednesday.
that.
Huh?
Tuesday, I think.
Tuesday.
It's
Yeah.
the Lords of Film screening.
Oh,
Yeah. We tried to
Oh,
go to
shit,
Jelly
it is,
Roll.
huh?
We tried to go
Damn.
to Jelly Roll, and while they were at Jelly Roll for the little time they were there outside, we didn't go inside, but we were outside on the sidewalk. We had volunteers out there. They got like 80 something signatures in like no time.
That's
And then
awesome.
the tech officers kicked us off of the public sidewalk that technically we had the right to be on, but we're not going to argue with them. So they kicked us off, and then Jelly Roll was on stage talking about how dumb it was that he could get pulled over with Oxycontin in his pocket and be fine, but go to jail for a joint here in Lubbock.
Oh,
He was
man.
chilling with Afro Man before the concert, too.
Yeah,
Yep.
you know what they were doing.
Yep, and we went to the Afro Man, but nobody was there, and so Afro Man ended up going to Jelly Roll. So
Oh shit!
Oh, shit.
yeah, there was nobody at the Afro Man show.
He's
Yeah.
always here, and Vanilla Ice is always here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus, well that sucks. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, oh man. But hopefully we can have you back on before May.
Yeah, so after we turn these in and it goes to the council and all that, the next step will be to get out the vote for May, because a lot of people are worried that they think the council has some sort of say over this. They don't. Once they vote it down, we're going to put it on a ballot, and it goes to the people, so it's up to us.
There you go, people.
Yep.
Well, brother, I appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah, thanks for
Doing
having
this,
me. Great conversation.
Next time, can you legalize sports gambling? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I love that thing. But anything else for the people out there? Any final messages?
Just, you could go to freedomactlubbock.org on our website. You'll see the whole list of events where we'll be at. And just the last thing I always try to tell people when I'm on an interview is, because a lot of people are like, why should I sign this? If I don't use it, maybe I don't even like it, right? Like, why should I sign this? Just ask yourself one question. Do you think people should be in jail for this? For personal use marijuana? Whether that's somebody you don't know or whether you have people that you do know that you care about that may use it from time to time for whatever. Do you think they need to be in jail for it? And if the answer is no, please sign our petition, because that's all it's about. We don't think they should be in jail either. And so it's not an admission that you're using it. It's not even an admission that you like it. It's just you using your freedom of speech, saying that I don't think people should be in jail for it.
There you go. Righto.
Yeah, go support, go vote, all that stuff.
And thank y'all for signing.
yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
cool. Our civil duty.
Yeah, no, just be part of your community. I mean, I like to see myself as somebody that puts a lot of effort into their community, like art and entertainment wise, but I don't know if I'll be in Lubbock for the rest of my life, but I have roots here and I am not ashamed where I came from. You know what I mean? And I grew up off Avenue Q, and I grew up, in the Arnott Benson, and I grew up having sleepovers behind Parkway, and I cruise, I go to the Sunday and I
Yep.
cruise, and that neighborhood is very much alive, and it's very much my roots. You know what I mean? And I hope that the impact I make in my community, whether it's future generations or anything or whatever groundwork I can lay, I hope people don't have to run from their hometown to make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they have it here.
Yeah.
And so people don't feel stuck. This is not a dead end place.
Exactly.
Nope.
Come to Fools and Ghouls. I'll see you there October 21st.
Subscribe. Patreon.com/SnakePitStudios.
Hell yeah.
Hey, do you believe in aliens?